77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Let's welcome Dr. Carl Herico to the Dr. Sky Experience. Happy 4th of July to you and your family and all the listeners once again. How are you, sir?
Well, hello, Dr. Sky. Thank you for inviting me on your program. I really appreciate that, and I'm not only happy but thrilled to be on a program that's really at the cutting edge of science. And it's not only informative, but it's entertaining, and you can't beat that combination.
Well, and many thank yous, and you say it so well, if I can add that to the conversation. But it's amazing. You and I cross paths, just to let everybody know out there, more so in the New York metro area. Many, many years ago, I was just a young kid in school. I was in grammar school, to be exact, up in Hackensack, New Jersey. And a good friend of mine, whose father was an aerospace engineer, said, we're going to go tonight to enrich you guys. That was a good friend of mine in school, Mark. And we're going to take you down to a place that has this big telescope in it at Union County College, known as what? Amateur Astronomers Incorporated. And, Doctor, this is interesting because even though I never met you then, and probably saw you when I passed through the hall, who knows? But talk about that experience, because people in areas that are light polluted, we have opportunities even today in this show to share with them. It's not just being in the super dark sky. So talk about this whole organization called Amateur Astronomers Incorporated. I was honored to be part of it.
Well, the AAI, or Amateur Astronomers Incorporated, is an amateur organization that was allowed to use the observatory and, of course, the telescopes within the observatory, there were two, on the campus of Union County College in Cranford, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And yes. I first went there to see what was going on. I really wasn't into astronomy at that point too much. And, I saw these two big domes containing the respective telescopes. And I saw amateur astronomers outside. It had to be during warm weather, so probably during the summer, if I recall correctly. And they had their telescopes all over the area outside, as well as those who were inside, who had been trained to use those telescopes inside. And I saw one with his small white reflecting telescope. And as I mentioned before on a previous interview, that he was swiveling this thing around and he was pointing it to various points in the sky, and he's naming each of these celestial objects that he was looking at. He knew the names of all of them. And I was saying, wow, this is fantastic. Look at this guy. How the heck can he do this? How does he know where to go? Because at that time, very few telescopes had any kind of digitized control. No computers. Yes. And
you had to do it the old school way, and we'll get into that in this conversation with our special guest, Dr. Carl Herico. He's joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for the 2 hours. And this particular show goes back to the basic tenets of the Dr. Sky Experience, where we talk with you, not at you, about the wonders of the universe. And Doctor, I have a little bit of a challenge here for the listeners across the nation and around the world. If it's dark where you are, and if it's clear outside, we'd like you folks, because this is theater of the mind, to be an assisted set of eyes throughout the world, if it's in dark skies and clear. Give us a call at 1-800-848-9222. And what's the challenge? Describe to us or ask your question. And, of course, if you're not outside, you're welcome to call in, too, with all the wonders that we can talk about. But isn't that interesting, Doctor, that we can at least invite people to kind of guide them in their own celestial navigation, if we call it in the sky, to do what? The main purpose of this whole process, this show, is to talk about the great mysteries that are abound and around us. And I think that's a good start. So 1-800-848-9222. And if you're in city lights, of course, we still have, as we're mentioning here, places as close as what? Right there in Cranford, New Jersey. An opportunity. I gather it still exists, right? So we don't tell people to go there if it's not around. It's still in existence, correct?
Oh, yes, it's still in existence. And I'll be going there one of these days again to meet the old people that I made contact with at that time. And there are good people there that know a lot more information than I do, I'm sure, at this point.
Well, let's do this. Let's throw a challenge out there to the listeners of Talk Radio 77 WABC, and particularly even city dwellers have an opportunity to see this. Let's talk about something in the heavens right now, Doctor, that I think is so fascinating. I talk about it in some of the public programs I do. In the summer, as you well know, there's this great triangular group of brilliant stars. There's star Vega, there's a star Altair, and there's a star Deneb. So if you have clear skies right now, all the way from, say, the West Coast, and wherever you're listening, if there's dark and clear skies, this triangle is symbolic, obviously called a summer triangle. But let's dig into a little bit about these individual stars, Doctor, because they're so fascinating. If we put it in proximity to the size of our own sun, 865,000 miles in diameter, wow. What does that mean to everybody listening? 109 Earths would take up the diameter of our sun. And
Whoa.
you know, this is even more amazing. We mentioned it last night when we were talking, or yesterday. We were talking our topics of American exceptionalism, celebrating the great 4th of July, our independence. I mentioned to the audience that the Earth is farthest from the sun right now at a little more than 94,500,000 miles. So let's kind of get into the swing of things here, because there's so many wonderful things, and people are probably scratching their head, right, Doctor? How can we be so hot when we're farthest away from the sun? Imagine if we were closer. Wouldn't it be like hell? Carry that ball for a while. I think that's interesting.
Yes, there's a lot of mysteries like that in astronomy, that being one of them, the idea being that it's not the distance that makes that much difference in terms of our seasons. It's the tilt of the Earth. So the tilt of the Earth it makes a difference in a sense that at one point in our orbit, which is elliptical, and that's why we have a near point and we have a far point. So we're talking about the idea of having an apogee and a perigee, the apogee being the far point and perigee being the near point. Or you can phrase it in terms of using the sun in the word itself and say there's an aphelion, A-P-H-E-L-I-O-N, and the other one as well, which is perihelion. And so the same thing applies at the aphelion. We're the furthest away from the sun, and at the perihelion, we're the closest. Now, it's not that much of a difference, though, and that's what makes the difference in the seasons. It's the actual tilt itself from an imaginary line that's drawn through the Earth, forming its axis. And so the axis is tilted to its elliptical path of orbit around the sun. And that tilt makes the difference.
You say it so well, because let me say this, Doctor. This is an exceptional place. I mean, if you think about the Earth, and we look at this not only philosophically, but scientifically, as you know, and probably many listeners know, but for those that don't, here we go with the education that at least we deliver here, and we hope that you're happy with what you're hearing, of course. But the point is, this is a very special place, wouldn't you say? We see water. We see, obviously, human beings, maybe a lot of them, 7.5 billion. But the point is, Carl, Doctor, where else in the solar system do we have anything like us? And even if people like Elon want to go to Mars, it's a vast difference. And Venus, of all the planets like we talk about, has the most circular orbit, but that's literally hell on Earth. Imagine 900 degrees Fahrenheit every day. So tell us, Doctor, the exception here, exceptional. The Earth is so special. It has the ability to heal itself. And look at all the extinctions we've been through. Your analysis of this precious planet, as Carl Sagan talked about.
Yes, we are a special planet in the sense that the conditions are just right. As a matter of fact, that idea is called Goldilocks. And so we're in the Goldilocks zone from our sun. Now, there are other exoplanets going around other stars, other suns, that are at the Goldilocks position or ecozone, or the life zone, as it's also called. And although that's the case, however, the conditions may not be the same because of the makeup of the atmospheres, if in fact those planets have a significant amount of atmospheric conditions. We have it just right for our kind of life to exist in this kind of condition. And that makes it hard for us, although we have plans to have it accomplished, to go to other planets, like even to our satellite, the moon, our natural satellite. The conditions are completely different on the moon, on Mars. Maybe if we have in mind to go to one of the other satellites going around, maybe one of the other planets in our solar system.
Exactly.
We have to bring our whole environment with us in order to survive. There's no other way.
Well, you're so right, Doctor, and it's so interesting because what Dr. Carl Sagan said, I had the honor, maybe some of the listeners out there have met him once when I was in school and I was just a kid and I didn't really understand too much. I just said thank you, and I was kind of like a little groupie for the guy. But obviously he called it the pale blue dot. And if you just think of it philosophically, this is so special, and I don't mean to be repeating myself here. It's just that anywhere else that we look into this universe so far, even though we have these planetary objects, exoplanets, as you described so well, the probability here of life like this, and maybe sometimes many people outside there in the audience may think, well, hopefully it's not like that with the kind of habitation that we have, where we all just simply can't get along. But let me shift gears before we go, to the very bottom of the hour here. I want to talk with you about this whole thing about the summer triangle, and I want to identify the particular stars, and I'll start off with the one Vega. So, folks, if you have clear skies, and if you have your smartphone, and a lot of people use the apps out there, why not go outside if you're in dark enough skies, wherever you're listening to us? And if you point it high up into the sky, you'll have to just search the sky because every location is different because of the far-reaching broadcast band of Talk Radio 77 WABC. But from where I am here in Arizona, the bright blue star, the brilliant of the three, is a star called Vega, 25 light years away, right, Doctor? And if you think about this, the entire solar system, if you see that star, folks, which is much larger than our own sun, we're moving toward that in space at about 200 or more miles per second. So that's hard to imagine. But imagine, folks, what were you doing 25 years ago? In the simplest way, Doctor, we can explain it. That the light left there 25 years ago and it just got here tonight. But tackle some of the others. I mean, Altair, the other part of the triangle, and the Star Deneb, if you'd like to continue on that. People, I'm sure, would like to hear more about the other two parts of the triangle that you can see by looking up in a clear sky right now across the listening audience.
Well, the brightest star in the summer sky is Vega. So you can't miss it if you're looking for the summer triangle, which it's called. You look for a very bright star up in the sky, and that would be Vega automatically. So of that triangle, you spot that star first, and then you can come in line with Deneb and Altair as a result of that.
Yes.
So it's quite an interesting sight to behold as you look up at the sky. And there's, by the way, there's also other types of celestial objects located within areas of the sky. And in Lyra, the harp, you'll find, and Vega is part of Lyra, the harp, you'll find a special kind of object called a nebula. It's called a ring nebula. And it comes from a star that has lost its atmosphere, blowing outward, forming a ring, like you would make a smoke ring coming out of your mouth, blowing out smoke from your mouth. And you can see this ring in that constellation. It's a beautiful thing to behold, and of course you'd have to use a telescope to see it. And I'm not sure whether or not a very powerful pair of binocs might also enable you to see the ring nebula.
I've seen it, Doctor, in dark skies, and I was just up at a home we have in the mountains. And, this is interesting because we were doing this just a few days ago before the moonlight came through. And you're right, you could see them. And I had a little pair of, 12 by, 10 by 24 power binoculars. And let me define that. Folks, when you're looking at binoculars, the left number of the two is the power, the magnification, and the right number is the millimeters of the lens that's in the front. So it's like almost an inch, 24 millimeters, 25.4 millimeters to an inch, and 10 power. Yeah, I spotted it with no problem among many other objects, but let's appeal to the people who may not have the super darkest of skies. Believe me, folks, in this 2-hour presentation, talking about what we both love, and I'm sure many of you out there do, there's a lot more information here. But, Doctor, I wanted to add something. The star Altair, one of the three of the stars, is 16 light years away. But we saved the best for last, ladies and gentlemen. The other star of that triangle is Deneb. And in its version from its Arabic translation means the tail of a giant swan in the heavens. But it's interesting. They're saying allegedly about 2,600 light years away. So that's the real showstopper. Imagine, where were we 2,600 years ago? Ouch. I wasn't here. You weren't there. So the light takes 2,600 years when you see Deneb right now. It took that long. So in summation, give us some other tips about how to view the summer triangle. It's a beautiful story.
Well, as I said before, the idea is to look up at the sky to find the brightest star that you can identify. And that would be Vega automatically as part of that triangle. And let's see, if I recall the positioning of the stars, I may not be correct, but in my mind right now, regarding Deneb and Altair, I believe Deneb is lower left, whereas Altair is lower right relative to Vega.
You're right. Absolutely, Doctor. That's why we have great guests like you to describe these things, because so many people, let me say this, we learn some of this stuff in school, but the best place, as you know, and of course you're an experienced teacher, no doubt you would agree that actually putting hands onto this is really the thing that makes it happen. So it's pretty easy to see. That's one of the things we talk about here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Vega, sometimes referred to in the beautiful poetic version, the sapphire of summer, because of its intense blue light. And isn't that interesting, too, just to add to the conversation? And I'd love the listeners to add to the conversation. Of course, many questions or comments you might have, as we're appealing to those of you that may be out of doors, no matter where you're listening to the powerful signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Give us a shout, because we'd love to have a dialogue with you as what you're seeing with your questions. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. As we continue our conversation to move out beyond planet number 3 with our special guest. He's a repeat guest, and he will continue to be, in my mind, Dr. Carl Herico, discussing with us so many of the wonders that we find in our summer sky. So some of the other things, if you're really in a dark sky, right, Doctor, you can actually see the entire band of the Milky Way. How many people have seen that? And maybe you're one out there listening.
As a matter of fact, you know, Dr. Sky, there's less and less, unfortunately, that type of sky to see, where it really is dark enough to spot these objects, which can't be seen too readily, skies that are light polluted. And as I mentioned, it's really hard to find a place. It's like you need a special reserve to even see stars in the sky. It's really unfortunate that that's taking place, but it's a trade-off, I suppose, between advancing kind of development going on in various locations, bringing in all kinds of what we're calling light pollution. And, you know, I know that no one likes it to rain on their parade, and if that were the case, they would have no parades, you know.
Yeah,
or
you're right.
You wouldn't have any rain. The other way
well,
around.
let me add something to the conversation, too, that if you're out there and you're not a person who uses their smartphone, because remember, we talk about, as you mentioned, Doctor, light pollution. It takes an average of about maybe 30 or 40 minutes for your eyes to get dark adapted. Now, we're talking real serious viewing here. So if you have a smartphone, you can use it, of course. Obviously, it helps. But here's another little tip. A free service that you can get is simply go to this website, skymaps.com. And I use it all the time because we hand these out to children and adults and seniors, because not everybody has or wants to have a smartphone, and I'm holding in my hand The Skies of July 2025, a beautiful rendition here showing us where the principal stars are, what planets are visible, and of course, on the left side, it talks the chronology of things that are happening each day almost of the calendar month, and it describes what's coming up very soon here on the 10th, another of the great full moons. And some people grind their teeth when they say, oh, the full moon. Well, it's a beautiful thing. But many people, as you know, Doctor, they want and crave the dark sky because the full moon is beautiful. But there again, how would you describe the people that are really, really into this? I mean, they'll get upset if you had even one of those little LED lights on you if it wasn't red. They want dark skies.
No. Never have that on. As a matter of fact, I visit one of the dark sky sites here in New Jersey, if you can imagine that.
Yes.
Over at Jenny Jump State Forest in Warren County, Hope, New Jersey. And that's about the darkest area in New Jersey. And still, there's enough light pollution to prevent you from seeing the Milky Way, maybe as you described it. But still, you can see many different types of celestial objects in the sky very well. And this organization, United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey, is located there. And people bring their telescopes there in order to see what we're talking about right now, since it is the darkest area of New Jersey. And we have telescopes located throughout that whole area, as a matter of fact. And it's a consortium of various kinds of amateur astronomy clubs throughout New Jersey. So it's really not a club, it's a consortium of clubs that become members in order to use the facilities that we have there. We can sleep overnight there, as a matter of fact, because, there are these amateur astronomers that are really involved in astrophotography as well.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to talk so much about that and many other topics here. I know you and I today, the audience doesn't know this, of course, but we'll share it. We were discussing these new AI telescopes. What's that? So you can set up this little device that looks a little fatter in the side, much thicker, I should say, the appropriate way to say it, than an iPad. And when you put it on a little tripod, they only cost sometimes $500, maybe $1,000 if you go to the extreme one. But you put it there, and it has this little control from your cell phone, your smartphone, and it takes images of the night sky, folks, even for city dwellers, and it does what they call, in the technical version, it gets out all the haze, and it creates some of the most amazing pictures. So let's say you're in a fairly light-polluted area. It has the basic technology to show you the deep sky, maybe not as good as a super dark sky, but I think that's fascinating, and we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. So as we almost approach the bottom of the hour in radio, the hard break as we call it, I'd like to just one more time make that appeal. So if you're listening to us, the far-reaching sound and signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, this would be my dream, Doctor. Somebody's outside at the campsite and they're listening to this radio station. And they're doing it old school on the power of AM radio, so important still in today's world.
Oh, yeah.
And guess what? And they're calling in, as they will, and they're saying, I'm out there looking up into the heavens, and Dr. Sky, we're sharing this with Dr. Herico and your questions and comments because, hey, you never know. You might see a big fireball or a meteor. Or, for those that are in the East Coast, remember what happened, as you know, Carl, that whole experience with UAPs and all unidentified flying objects. I'm not laughing at that. It's just that we still don't have an answer to it. So much more, ladies and gentlemen. We come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, wishing you and each and every one of you sincerely, from all of us to all of you, the entire staff, and to everybody listening, the best for a healthy and happy 4th of July weekend. And I'm kind of thinking that many of you are out there listening right now. We're just waiting to hear from you. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
33 minutes after the hour. Thank you, Dr. Tholen, as we continue to discuss many of the things that are the mysteries of the universe, from everything from astronomy, space, the UAP and UFO phenomenon. Your questions and comments here at 1-800-848-9222. Something from the quote category: two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe, end quote, by the famous Albert Einstein. Dr. Herico, this is awesome. We've got a full board of callers here, and I think these individuals have lots of things to say to us. Let's say good morning and happy 4th of July weekend to you, Ted in Forest Hills. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you. May I ask, could you please explain the Keck telescope, or why does light have a speed limit, and what is entanglement? Maybe you could choose one of them, please.
Well, go ahead, Doctor. Well, you can jump on those. They were fast given to us, so stay with us, Ted, in case we have to ask you to repeat one of the comments. Go ahead there.
Okay, God bless you. Yes, certainly.
Doctor, please.
Okay, we're talking about three different topics here, and let's see. Well, when you mention entanglement, that's part of quantum physics. And I don't know how much you've read about information regarding quantum physics, but there are various processes that they've given labels to because that's what we do. We give labels to various types of phenomena, and one of them is entanglement, as you mentioned, where if one particle moves a certain way, then somehow it influences another matching particle at a distance in the same way. And we don't know how that takes place. At least I don't know how that takes place, and I haven't come across any information so far in terms of the mechanism behind that process. But
it's amazing.
It's a whole new, strange world. It's like Alice in Wonderland, and they can't explain how these different types of phenomena occur. They've got no way through mathematics of explaining it either. And one of the problems is to bring the phenomenon of gravity in line with quantum physics. They haven't discovered how to do that yet. So gravity is still a problem in terms of a fundamental force in our universe. So there's a lot of unexplained things, obviously.
Well, there are, and I want to jump in, Ted, here. I know you had a couple of other concerns, too, but the entanglement thing, in my mind, would be something like this, Doctor. If you had, let's say, a light switch on one side of the universe, let's say the Milky Way galaxy, in the simplistic way, if that was a force, I'm using just the simple thing of a switch, instead of traveling at the speed of light would take you 150,000 years, the diameter of a galaxy, Ted, then it would be done instantaneously. That is a very, very strange phenomenon. Ted, you had a couple of others. I don't think we caught those. Please continue.
Well, why does the speed of light have a limit? Is that known? And what's with the Keck telescope? Is that hot stuff? Please?
Doctor?
Well, the speed of light has a limit, because if it didn't, then we'd have no way of determining what is happening in the universe. And looking at various phenomena regarding the idea of the speed of light wouldn't make any sense at all. It wouldn't be able to take place without there being a limit to the speed of light, which, as you know, probably is 186,000 miles per second. We don't notice that because in our world of existence, it's moving so quickly through a short space that we're viewing that we can't discern its actual speed. But long distances, of course, it makes a difference. And
well, you know, I gotta jump in here. Sorry to cut you short, Doctor, but Ted, think of it this way. Just an additional bit of info here. The speed of light in 1 minute, light travels 11 million miles. So if you want to do the computation of the speed of light in miles per hour, we say it often, and it's almost, well, it's incredible. 670 million miles an hour, which is just faster than anybody's Tesla Plaid or fast motorcycle or even our conventional chemical rockets. So that's bizarre. But, Doctor, I think the gentleman, Ted, is asking about the Keck telescope. You're talking about what, Ted, the ground-based Keck, or you're not talking about the James Webb?
Yeah, I answered the phone once, and the person said, "My name is Mr. Keck." And I said, "You mean like a telescope?" Wasn't that a good one?
Well, go ahead, Doctor, because the Keck telescope is a ground-based telescope. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Doctor, explain that.
Thank you.
Now, what do you want to know about the Keck telescope exactly?
Why is it so hot? Why is it even mentioned? Why do I know the name?
Maybe you're related.
I think the Air Force pilot. Retired.
There you go.
Well, it's one of the most famous telescopes, and one of the first that was introduced in the past that was able to observe, image, of course, take photos of objects that were not able to be accessed before the Keck-based telescope, which had the best optics of that time. But since then, there's been a lot of other telescopes that have been introduced, and now especially the orbiting telescopes, space telescopes, are well above our atmosphere, not affected by a telescope which is land-based, a terrestrial telescope like the Keck, which was at that time very high up, so that it would be looking only through a very small portion of the atmosphere that would be thinner than those other terrestrial telescopes down lower, like Mount Palomar and so forth. So
yes.
At that time, it was the best type of telescope to get the best out of any kind of astronomic viewing and information about what's up there in the sky. Now we have, as I mentioned, the orbiting telescopes. And now we get a lot more information in terms of all the wavelengths of light, infrared.
Well, Ted,
ultraviolet.
excuse me for jumping in here, but we're going to have to run here, Ted. But I want to mention one more thing. In all the great technical terms that astronomers have, these fancy terms, entanglement and such, one of the largest telescopes, Doctor, as you know, we were talking about it before, and this is interesting, Ted, and everybody listening, the ELT, Extremely Large Telescope. What a simple name for something that'll be in Chile that has probably a 150-foot mirror, and that becomes a whole nother story. Ted, your questions are awesome, and so we appreciate you. So have a good 4th of July weekend, sir. Let's continue on. The caller board is full, as we would expect, in such great topics. Let's say good morning to Frank in New Jersey. You're on with Dr. Carl Herico.
Gentlemen, is there black matter surrounding Uranus?
Wow. Now, there you go. Is that Henny Youngman or is that a Rodney Dangerfield line? I don't know.
And does he want an answer?
Yes.
He wants an answer?
I think so. It's nothing like humor that it livens programs. Isn't that true? That's amazing.
Oh, of course. A little bit of levity in life.
Well, I think Frank has moved out into the cosmos. Let's say good morning to Jeff in New Jersey, if you're with us. Good morning, and I don't know if you have one to top the last caller, but give us what you have in a dialogue.
Good morning, doctors. I am a former student of Union County College, and I do remember going there to the observatory many, many years ago, and I just wanted to know, do they still have tours there like they used to have years ago on Friday nights?
Hey, describe your face. I may have seen you. No, I'm only joking.
And remember, Doctor, this is theater of the mind here, so go ahead.
Okay. So describe what? I'm sorry. Describe what about Union County College and the observatory?
I was a former student and alum. I taught there for a while, and they used to have the observatory open on like Friday nights many years ago. Do they still have that? Do you know?
Yes, they still have the observatory open, and they also have, as Dr. Sky mentioned, the Amateur Astronomer Incorporated, where I probably first met him without knowing he was Dr. Sky.
That's right. I was just a 12-year-old kid in search of knowledge, and you probably helped me. Thank you.
I hope so.
Well, Jeff, no, this is interesting because what I'm hearing here is this whole great bastion for knowledge, this location is still around, and that's great because I would imagine in areas that have light pollution, there is still, as we're hearing, great locations to explore the universe, whether it's the moon, safe solar viewing, or whatever. But, Jeff, I'm sorry, you had more of a question or comment beyond that? Because we're going to move on if you don't.
That was just my question, that they still have tours there on the evenings on Friday nights, and it's something that I'd be interested in checking out again, and maybe I'll see one of your doctors there.
Well, that's very nice of him to call in. We appreciate that. Folks, I just want to mention, too, that if we haven't gotten to you yet, as we come up to the next break here in just a moment or two, we will do our best to listen, because I think that's the whole art of conversation is to listen, and I think that's an important part of not only every show, but every facet of life. We learn something by listening in dialogue when we do communicate. But, Doctor, this is interesting, talking about so many of the subjects. What I want to cover, we heard Dr. Tholen before in a promo. I had an opportunity to interview a number of years ago on the discovery of the asteroid, which is, and let's talk in correct terms, because you and I are not going to do yellow journalism. We're going to give facts out here, but it's incredible in my opinion, and we could go on with a longer explanation of this after the break maybe. Sometimes in media, and we look at this on the internet. Now, obviously, not everybody certainly believes everything they read. That would be ridiculous. But I have two little bones to pick. When we hear about asteroidal bodies, we hear so many stories about there's an asteroid the size of an aircraft carrier. There's even one crazy story, 4 times the height of Taylor Swift. I mean, serious. I read this, and it wasn't a joke. The point I'm making is very simple, and everybody would probably agree and smile and move on. Is that, let's get it accurate, these asteroidal bodies, as we talk about later in the program, are not necessarily going to hit us anytime soon. That's what we hope, no guarantee. And the other thing that I'd like to talk about, and not to sound gripish here, is that so many times we hear more about this whole UFO phenomenon, and some of the journalists, of course, discount the possibility that this could be from other worlds and whatever. Doctor, I appreciate you, and if we haven't gotten you on the air, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us, please. as we move through this most amazing time in American history, the 249th birthday, as you know, of America's independence, here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, as we talk here with you on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back. Lots more to say.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The life of man is of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster, said a long time ago by someone you may know in history, Marcus Aurelius. 46 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest, not only in hour one, but in hour number two, with Dr. Carl Herico. Doctor, you're lighting up the phone lines here, and I'd like to go ahead and just go down the caller list here. You've been patient on the phone. We say good morning to Joe in New Jersey. How are you?
Hello? Yes, is it me?
I'm sorry, Joan? Is this Joan? I apologize, Joan.
Yeah, hi, in Manhattan, not New Jersey.
Yes,
I'm wondering, you mentioned the tilt of the Earth, and is it my understanding that it is the tilt of the Earth that is responsible for what we call weather? And if you're on Mars, the only familiar thing about Mars, I think, would be the length of the day, right? The Mars turns on its axis every, 24 hours and 40 minutes, something like that.
About that. Yes, you're about right.
Yeah, which is very much like our day. But if Mars is not tilted, does that mean that it would have equal hours of light and darkness all year long, all of its year long, and everywhere on the planet, as opposed to what we have, which is where we just had the solstice, where we had almost 16 hours of sunlight, and the southern hemisphere had about 8 hours of sunlight? How would it be on Mars?
You bring up good questions, Joan. Doctor, we have somebody out there that's seeking answers.
Well, first of all, if you look at some kind of a diagram that displays the planets, you'll see that all the planets have a tilt to a certain degree. I don't believe there's any one of them that has its axis of rotation lined up with the idea of that line drawn perpendicular to its plane of orbit. And as a result, there are some seasons longer, shorter, but yet each one of them has some kind of a tilt. So that would modify your question or your expectation of an answer to your question somewhat, wouldn't it?
Yes, but I'm wondering, is the tilt, we have, 23 degree, you said,
23 and a half,
pun you made there, they're all tilted to a degree. How many degrees? We have quite a tilt, right? 23 and a half degrees.
That is correct.
Must be tilted a lot less, and if that were the case, would it have more equal hours of sun and darkness all year round and everywhere on the planet? What is the tilt on Mars? Do we know exactly?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'd have to check it. With no offhand, because it's hard to memorize everything. Yeah.
Well, Joan, let me say this. Here's a strange one in the solar system that I'm very fluent in, and here we go. Look at the planet Uranus, and again, to the audience, I pronounce it Uranus, and it has a 98-degree tilt on its axial, inclination.
Whoa.
So it's actually weird. It's actually rolling almost pole as you would see it. It's the strangest little thing. And it's not that little. It's this big methane planet. It just sits out there. It was discovered. Doctor, you know this. Doctor, the story of William Herschel, this is another story we could go into for hours. On March 13, 1781, he discovered what he called Uranus. And this particular planetary object was really not going to be named after these different Greek and Roman gods. He came up with an idea to call it Georgium Sidus in honor of King George. And all the astronomy people said, hell no, we're not going to have politics get into the naming of planets. But that's a strange one, Joan. Any other comment that you want to make before we move on?
No, I just want to say I love that quote from Albert Einstein about the two things that are infinite. But also I wanted to make a little side comment. If I'm not mistaken, the orbit of Pluto is just about 248 years, which means that we're celebrating the 249th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that means that Pluto was just about where it is right now in the sky relative to the sun at that time when Jefferson published the Declaration of Independence. Is that correct?
Doctor, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Joan, hey, Doctor, if we were giving prizes on this radio show, I think she would be so far the most intriguing caller. Right.
Number one. As a matter of fact, if you lived on Pluto, you wouldn't have any birthdays.
Joan, before we say have a great weekend, in my college days, Dr. Tamba was my professor in college, the guy who discovered it. Now, here again, this is amazing. I know, Doctor, you know this. But February 18th, 1930, this little guy from Kansas, and I say little, he was a very small man, came with $20 from Kansas, good old Kansas boy. And he wanted to work at the Lowell Observatory here in Arizona. And they said, well, basically then, in the old days, well, why would we want to hire you? And he said, because I love the night sky and I want to be an astronomer. So he got a job from a guy named Vestos Slifer, sweeping the floors, doing and helping develop those big, like the old X-ray machines had those giant photographic plates. He worked, and finally, he got the opportunity to discover, isn't it sad, Joan and Doctor, his planet has now become a dwarf. One of the biggest controversies in science, but we'll have to leave it at that. So, Joan, thank you. Boy, if we had prizes, maybe we ought to come up with some prizes, don't you think, folks?
Oh, okay. I'll accept it. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good weekend.
The prize is your response, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Blessings to you. Let's say hello to Joe in New Jersey as we move to the top of the hour. You're on with Dr. Carl Herico. How are you this morning?
Yes, hi, Doctor and Dr. Sky. I have a story about in 1970, I graduated high school, remembering about reading radio astronomy, and that was just starting when they found the Arneo and Penzias, the two fellows who founded that...
AT&T.
There you go. And that, what did they find in the universe? I forgot exactly. Arno Penzias and the other fellow. What was that big discovery?
Cosmic microwave background.
Background radiation. Exact. Yes. Anyhow, in high school, of course, sixth grade, we went to the Hayden Planetarium. Remember squeezing through the back entrance with the kids going in to see the sky show? Well, as it goes, I'm 72 now, and I married the daughter of the art director there in the planetarium when the Zeiss projector was still playing, its swirling star shows. Yes, he was.
Well, you know what, guys? Hey, before Doctor responds, we went there as kids because I'm a New Yorker. I was born in Jamaica, Queens. And we went there all the time. It was great. And we did the Natural History Museum. But my little sister, who was 3 years younger than me, and we were small, we went in and she couldn't stop crying and screaming because it looked like a giant ant or a monster that projector.
Yes, it was very spooky, of course, if you're too young. But sixth grade, I unfortunately missed this 64 World's Fair, but that's another topic. Anyhow, his history there, he came out of Munich, Germany. Helmut Wimmer, Wimmer. If you look him up on the Google, you search and get his background. But he married, of course, came over to the country, and luckily the retiring person at the planetarium was just a German, also speaking person. He slid into this job in 1957-ish and worked until the 90s. And we still have fond memories. He is one of the first art directors who had a visual description of the black hole, and my question was, it's on the web, Helmut Wimmer, and is there a black hole in the center of our galaxy, or is there such a thing as a white hole? I don't know.
There's supposed to be a supermassive black hole, and I came across an astrophysicist, had the chance to interview him, who came up with the idea that also, besides the black hole, it might be possible that there's a wormhole there as well. And he kind of suggested that something like that should be searched for by looking for the behavior of stars nearby the center of the black hole, which is in the constellation, in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius.
You're right. And this is interesting, Joe. Before we hit the top of the hour here, I just wanted to mention, to add on to what Doctor's saying, this is interesting. It's called Sagittarius A star, like an asterisk next to it. And basically, it looks like it eats stars for breakfast and lunch, if there is such a thing. But, Doctor, I'm going to brag on you for all the listeners out there. Dr. Herico has a very interesting background, too. He's also a very successful podcaster. And you can go to Carl's Orbit as a podcast, right, Doctor, out there in cyberspace. And you've got a lot of other interesting interviews, too. So I'm bragging on you. There you go.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Hi. One more question.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering why they knocked down the old wasn't that a historical monument? And they put up the Rose Center for Art and Science. I don't know what it was, but I don't think they should have knocked that down. But, of course, that's way beyond my intelligence. So I was wondering why that was knocked down, and now it's all brand new and shiny.
As I understand it, they wanted to build a whole new kind of structure to represent astronomy a little better. And I believe who was involved in that, in the planning of the Rose Center for, I think it's called Rose Center because the Rose family funded it, of Earth and Space. I believe that's the name for it now. It was designed to a certain extent, and maybe completely, by the astronomer Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes.
You're familiar with him.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you for being part of the show. We appreciate this as we talk about these subjects that, bragging on the good doctor here with his podcast, Carl's Orbit, and so many other things that maybe the great mysteries of the universe are unfolding right here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Folks, if you haven't gotten on and you're still in the caller queue, we will be welcoming you in hour number 2 as we continue to move through time and space. Thank you, Joe, in New Jersey. It's nice to reminisce with people who remember the Hayden Planetarium and the large projector that looked like an ant out of a sci-fi movie. That's amazing. You know, here we go, Doctor. As we move into hour number 2, I want to ask you if you write these down because I might forget it. Let's talk about what Dr. Tholden was saying, the promo that we did before, about asteroid Apophis. I want to set the record straight on that because so many people are curious. On April the 13th, remember, file your taxes early, in 2029, an asteroid body some 1,450 feet long, larger than most big nuclear aircraft carriers in the American, naval portions of the world, is going to come exceptionally close to the Earth, even inside, right, Doctor? The geosynchronous 22,000-mile orbit of satellites around the Earth. It has a long, sordid history of people saying it will hit us and it won't hit us, but so much more when we come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't gotten in, we promise we'll get you on the air here with your commentary, as we call it, dialogue, 1-800-848-9222. And I'm still waiting, Doctor, for somebody to call us who's actually outside some remote location or even a place where there's dark skies to converse with us, because theater of the mind needs some observational identity too. We'll be right back for hour number 2.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.